So I will just wait for your beginning, then I will take.
Okay. So can we start? I don't think everyone is present today, but
Today, generally, the attendance is poor.
oh,
For all the classes, I think.
okay. So they will be having their exams in July 15, starting from July 15. So if this is the trend, then this will be a real issue. They could get into serious trouble. Ashwin, can you hear me? Ashwin Mahesh? Meenakshi, what about you? Meenakshi?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Okay. So now I got another meeting come up at 9 o'clock with the KTU Academic Council. So we don't have much time to spare. So I think I will start without much ado. I believe that Manoj sir had been discussing about Z transforms and their properties, right? Can someone respond?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that would be the fifth module. Z transforms, the region of convergence, inverse Z transform, properties, unilateral Z transforms, and then he would also have probably discussed the analysis of discrete time linear time invariant systems using Z transforms, right? And the concepts of transfer function. So just like you have your Laplace transforms for the continuous time systems and continuous time signals, you have the Z transforms to analyze discrete time signals and systems. Okay. So we have discussed earlier that for the continuous time signals and systems, you have Laplace transforms and Fourier transforms to analyze the signals and the systems. And you can do the analysis using either Laplace transforms or Fourier transforms. Now, can any one of you explain why do you require a Laplace transform when you already have a Fourier transform? You can always analyze a signal and a system using Fourier transform. Then why do you require a Laplace transform for analysis of continuous time signals or continuous time systems? Can anyone explain?
For stable and unstable systems.
Right, exactly. Luke is from ECA batch, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can analyze signals that are not absolutely integrable. So, for example, you can analyze the signal e raised to at into u of t. That's an exponential signal. If a is greater than 1, that's an exponentially increasing signal. So, for example, e raised to 2t into u of t will increase with respect to time. That signal is not therefore absolutely integrable. But that signal can have a Laplace transform. So you can analyze signals that are not absolutely integrable using Laplace transform. That's possible. Likewise, if you look at a continuous time system, you can even analyze certain kinds of unstable systems using Laplace transforms. So the advantage in using Laplace transforms for analysis of these kind of systems is that you can design stabilization strategies. So if you can look at how unstable a system is, then you can obviously design methods to stabilize the system. Say, for example, if you have a pole at s is equal to 2, so which means you have a factor s minus 2 in the denominator for the transfer function. So h of s contains a term s minus 2 in the denominator. So which means there is a pole in the denominator at s is equal to 2, which is on the right side of the s plane. Now you also have seen that for stability, you need all the poles to be on the left side of the s plane, right? So if you have a pole on the right side of the s plane, then a very simple method to stabilize the system is to add a 0 at s is equal to 2. So which means you introduce a term s minus 2 in the numerator. So that will cancel out the s minus 2 in the denominator. So that way you can stabilize the system. So when you analyze a system using Laplace transforms, you can look at unstable systems also, and you can design strategies for strategies for stabilizing the system. So this very simple method that we had explained right now is called as the pole zero compensation, and this you will be studying in greater detail. I think in the 7th semester when you study control system. Earlier, as for the Cochin University of Science and Technology syllabus, this used to be in the 5th or 6th semesters, but as for the KTU syllabus, you will be doing this only in the 7th semester. Ideally, it is studied maybe just after DSP or maybe even parallel with DSP, etc. So ideally, it is studied in the 5th semester maybe. Okay, anyhow, the Z transform plays the same role as the Laplace transform for discrete time signals and systems. Manoj sir would have probably explained to you that you can look at different kinds of signals and find the result transform. You can look at signals that are not absolutely summable. So instead of you using the word integrable, here we will be using the word summable, because now you are looking at discrete sequences. Our signals are discrete sequences. Our systems are represented by impulse responses that are discrete sequences. So x of n, y of n, etc. These are signals. These are discrete sequences. H of n, the impulse response of a system, is a discrete sequence. So Z transform can be used to analyze all these signals, even though they are sometimes not absolutely summable. So just like Laplace transform. So what we have done is we have basically replaced the word integrable by summable. Okay. Now, just like the continuous Fourier transform, you have a Fourier transform for these sequences, discrete sequences, which we call as the discrete time Fourier transform. So now that is to be seen in the 5th module, where the portion that we have to discuss starts with this. You need to look at frequency domain representation of discrete time signals, and then you go on to discuss discrete time Fourier transform and its properties. So you can think of it as a parallel to your continuous Fourier transform. So discrete time Fourier transform is somewhat a parallel to your continuous Fourier transform for the discrete signals and system obvious. And then you also have this discrete time Fourier series, which is also sometimes called as a discrete Fourier series. Sometimes that word time is completely left out. In fact, that is the most commonly used representation. You do not normally use discrete time Fourier series. Instead, you use the word discrete Fourier series. So just like your Fourier series for continuous periodic signals, now this discrete Fourier series is used to analyze discrete periodic signals. So we will need to look at discrete time Fourier transform as well as discrete Fourier series. So it's called in your syllabus as discrete time Fourier series. So we need to look at discrete time Fourier transform, which we will call as DTFT in short, and discrete Fourier series, which we will call as DFS in short. Okay. So without much ado, I am going to share my screen for today's lecture. Is this visible to you? Can someone please?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Right. So now we will be looking at frequency domain representation of discrete signals. So remember that the last class I had taken was about sampling theorem, right? So once you sample a signal XFT, you end up with the samples of the signal, which you call as a discrete sequence. So samples of a signal is therefore a discrete sequence. So I will just revisit the sampling theorem to formulate your frequency domain representation of discrete time signals. And then finally, in today's class, we will end up with a formal definition for discrete time Fourier transform. So we will see how the expression for discrete time Fourier transform comes about, how it is derived and how the expression can be justified. So whenever you study something, the first question that you should be asking is why you are required to study this, not how you can study this. So you will, after today's class, hopefully, you will be able to see a justification for the discrete time Fourier transform, why that is important. Okay. So now we will have a review of our sampling theorem. I will not go as per our derivation that is taken in the previous class, but anyhow, you will be able to relate that to whatever we had discussed in the previous class. So the sampled sequence x of np, can you unmute the mic unless you are asked? Can you please, sorry, can you please mute your mics? Okay, the sample sequence x of np can be expressed as x of t into delta t of t. X of np is equal to x of t into delta t of t. So remember that multiplier which accepted x of t as one input and the sampling train as the second input. So when the sampling train delta t of t multiplies x of t, you get the sampled sequence. So that you can write as p equal to sigma n is equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of np delta t minus n. Now we will call this as equation A. So x of np is this expression. Okay. And now in the previous class we had found out that this sampled sequence will have a spectra that repeats itself. So you can sample only band limited signals, and we had discussed only the sampling of low pass band limited signals. So in the previous class, someone asked me whether you can do sampling of band pass signals. So that is in fact very eminently possible, but the theory that we will be deriving for band pass sampling is slightly different. Okay, we don't have to study that now. Anyhow, if you are interested, you can do further reading. We have seen that if you sample a low pass baseband signal, the spectra is periodically repeated. So xs of omega represents the frequency domain representation of my sampled sequence, and x of omega is the band limited low pass signal. X of omega is my band limited low pass. So xs of omega is given by this expression 1 by t sigma over k equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of omega minus k omega. So please observe this. I have used two variables here. One is n is equal to minus infinity to plus infinity for my time domain summation, and I have used the variable k sigma k equal to minus infinity to plus infinity for my frequency domain summation, right? So please note this very important distinction. I have very consciously decided to use n for the time domain sequence and k for the frequency domain sequence. Why? Because in literature you will almost always see that this variable n represents your time domain sequence and the variable k represents your frequency domain sequence. So it will not be very clearly evident after today's discussion. But once you move on to discrete Fourier transforms, discrete Fourier series, and then discrete Fourier transforms in the next semester, then you will see why this representation is important. So n is for time domain and k is for the frequency domain. So you can have this xs of omega is equal to 1 by t sigma over k x of omega minus k omega s, which will put as equation B. Okay, so I will just go to the representation of that. This is the representation. This we had seen. So this is my baseband signal, and the baseband signal repeats at every omega s. So that is the frequency domain representation. And we have discussed aliasing, we have discussed Nyquist sampling, we have discussed the Nyquist rate, etc. So all those we have discussed in the previous class. Now, so this is the spectra xs of omega is equal to 1 by t sigma over k x of omega minus k omega. Now what we'll do is we have this expression for x of nt. This is x of nt, and then we will compute the Fourier transform of this sampled sequence. X of nt is equal to sigma n equal to minus infinity plus infinity x of nt delta t minus nt. So we will compute the Fourier transform of that sequence. So if you take the Fourier transform of equation A, and noting that delta t minus nt is Fourier transform to e raised to minus j omega into nt. So delta t is Fourier transform to 1. And if you apply the time shifting property of Fourier transforms, you have this property that f of t, if it is Fourier transform to f of omega, then f of t minus tau is Fourier transform to e raised to minus j omega tau into f of omega. So we'll use that same property here. So delta t minus nt is therefore Fourier transform to 1 into e raised to minus j omega nt. So which means you can write excess of omega as equal to sigma n equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of nt e raised to minus j omega nt. Right? Is that good? So we have just taken the Fourier transform of this expression. So we will call this as equation C. Now, please also note that for reconstructing the signal from its samples, how will you reconstruct the signal from its samples? So again, we will go back to the spectrum here. We had noted that this is in fact, whatever you have here is in fact your baseband signal. Maybe it will have to be multiplied by t because there is a scaling by 1 by t in the periodic spectrum as we had seen. This is a scaling by 1 by t. So which means you might have to multiply, you will have to multiply by t. So for reconstructing the signal from its samples, you will require a reconstruction filter. And now that reconstruction filter is an ideal low pass filter. And the reconstruction filter, if it is critically sampled, that is, if the sampling rate is at twice the is infinitesimally greater than twice the maximum signal frequency, or omega s is equal to 2 omega m, then the signal can be reconstructed from the samples of the signal by passing the samples through an ideal low pass filter of cutoff frequency omega s by 2 with a gain of t. With a gain of t. How do you need a gain of t? Because you have a scaling by 1 by t here. So therefore you have to have a filter of gain equal to t, so that the amplitude of the original signal is exactly preserved. So you are trying to perfectly reconstruct the signal with its original amplitude and the obviously the original shape. So now for that what you require is an ideal low pass filter. Ideal low pass filter having a gain of equal to t and a frequency range, that's a pass band from minus omega s by 2 to plus omega s by 2. So that's your ideal low pass filter. So now we'll write the expression for x of t. So you are trying to require x of t from x of nt. Is that clear? So which means you can write this as an ideal, inverse Fourier transform expression. So x of t you can write as 1 by 2 pi integral minus infinity to plus infinity of some expression. 1 by what is it? Normal inverse Fourier transform expression. 1 by t, so 1 by 2 pi integral minus infinity to plus infinity x of omega e raised to j omega t d omega. So that's your normal Fourier transform expression. Now we are trying to require x of t from the sampled spectra. Now the sampled spectra is periodically repeating, out of which you require only the frequencies from minus omega s by 2 to plus omega s by 2. And in this range you require a gain of equal to t. So therefore the limits of the integral now becomes minus omega s by 2 to plus omega s by 2, because you are only concerned with the frequencies in this range. Only that corresponds to your baseband signal. So you require a gain of equal to t. So t into integral minus omega s by 2 to plus omega s by 2 excess of omega e raised to omega t d omega into 1 by 2 pi, which is part of the inverse Fourier transform expression. So this is the expression for x of t. So this is your output of the ideal low pass filter. So if you have this as x of t, what we are trying to write is we'll try to write an expression for x of nt from x of t. So x of nt would be therefore if you substitute t is equal to nt, you can therefore write this as 1 by 2 pi t integral minus omega s by 2 to plus omega s by 2 xs of omega into e raised to j omega nt. So I have substituted for t by nt d omega. So this I will call as equation B. So equation C and equation D. What we will do next is we will write these two equations together. So equation C and the equation D. So that is written here. Equation C and D are written together. So xs of omega. What is xs of omega? Xs of omega is your periodic spectrum. Periodic spectrum of the sample sequence. Xs of omega is equal to sigma n equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of nt e raised to minus j omega nt. So we will call this as equation C. This is your original equation C. And likewise, whatever we have derived right now is x of nt is equal to t by 2 pi integral minus omega s by 2 to plus omega s by 2 xs of omega e raised to j omega nt d omega. So we will call this as equation D. Now t by 2 pi, you know that 2 pi by t is your angular frequency omega s. So t by 2 pi is therefore 1 by omega s. So maybe you can replace this by 1 by omega s. Now in these two equations, you have a spectra xs of omega and you have a signal x of nt. Is that clear? So xs of omega is actually the frequency domain representation of x of nt. What we are trying to write is an analysis equation which analyzes x of nt in the frequency domain. So equation C is an analysis equation. And equation D is a synthesis equation which tries to synthesize x of nt given its frequency domain property. So you normally have an analysis equation and a synthesis equation for every transform that you see. For every transform, say for example, for Laplace transform, you have an analysis and a synthesis equation. You have a analysis and synthesis equation for your Fourier transforms. So this is also an analysis equation and a synthesis equation here. Now we will make some observations on these two equations. The first observation is that x of nt is a sequence of numbers existing at, let's say, n equal to 0, plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3, etc. So x of nt at n equal to 0 is the value of x of t at t equal to 0. So that is x of 0. X of nt at t is equal to plus or minus 1 is just x of t and the x of minus t. So therefore we can observe that x of nt is just a sequence of numbers. X of nt, you can think of it as a sequence of numbers because they exist only at specific time instants. So at one particular time instant, it's a number. So x of nt is therefore a sequence of numbers. So that is the first observation that we can make. X of nt is a sequence of numbers and therefore may be represented as the discrete sequence x of n. Is that clear? Now, what we will do next is we will use a frequency scaling. So frequency scaling. So you know, if you have a function f of t, then you can think of a function f of at. So depending on whether a is greater than 1 or less than 1, f of t is either compressed or expanded. So which means f of t is scaled. You can look at maybe sine omega naught t. Sine omega naught t, if I have sine 2 omega naught t, sine omega naught t is compressed. Is that clear? You have half the time period, twice the frequency. If you have sine 1 by 2 omega naught t, sine 0.5 omega naught t, then the time period is double that of the original sine wave. So it is expanded. Likewise, I can think of a frequency scaling in the frequency domain. So let me think of a scaling in the frequency domain in the form small omega is equal to capital omega into t. Okay. So this is for the first time that I have introduced the variable small omega. I don't know which symbol Manoj sir has used for representing frequency of continuous time signals. Was it small omega or capital omega? Can anyone from A batch answer? Can anyone from A batch? Anjali Suresh A batch ana. What about you, Anjali Suresh? Can you unmute your mic and answer this? Maybe she is not in front of her computer right now, maybe somewhere else. Manisha Binni? Anyone? Anyone from the A batch? Which is a symbol that Manoj sir uses to represent a continuous frequency, capital omega or small omega?
Capital omega.
Okay, so we are using the same representation therefore. So capital omega refers to a continuous frequency, capital omega. So now we are introducing a new variable small omega. New variable small omega. Manoj sir would have explained that this Z domain variable is a complex quantity, right? Which is expressed in the polar form. So Z equal to R e power j omega. So you would have represented this as Z equal to R e power j omega. So which means that in the polar form you have a radius equal to R and you have an angle is equal to omega. So there that omega would have been a small omega. So small omega is used to represent the discrete frequency, whereas capital omega we will be using to represent the continuous frequency. So please note this convention. This is for the first time that we are using this representation here. So we will use a frequency domain scaling of the form small omega is equal to capital omega into t. So what is capital T? Where t is the sampling interval. Where t is the sampling interval. That is the interval between the samples. T being the sampling interval. Now, capital omega has got the dimensions of radians per second. T has got the dimension of seconds. So omega into t, therefore, will be a dimensionless quantity. Why? Because this dimension is second raised to minus 1. This is second. So second raised to minus 1 into second will be dimensionless. So which means omega is dimensionless and is measured as an angle. So omega is measured as an angle and it is measured in radians. So that's a very important distinction between continuous and the discrete frequencies. The continuous frequency is measured in radians per second, whereas the discrete frequency is measured in radians. So that's a very important difference. So discrete frequency is not measured in radians per second. Discrete frequency is measured in radians. So omega, small omega is equal to capital omega into t. So omega is a dimensionless quantity, therefore, which is measured in radians. And if I take an incremental quantity, very small incremental quantity of omega, that you can write as d omega, that you can write as t into d capital omega, right? So now we will write the equation C and D that we have observed here in terms of this new variable small omega. So let us write the expression for excess of omega first. So instead of omega, we will try to represent it in terms of small omega. So excess of omega is therefore excess of small omega by t. Why? Because omega is equal to capital omega to t. And capital omega is therefore small omega by t. So excess of small omega by t is equal to sigma n is equal to minus infinity to plus infinity. Instead of x of nt, I will use the representation x of n. Instead of omega into capital T, I will use the representation small omega. So therefore, this can be represented as excess of omega by t is equal to sigma over n equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of n e raised to minus omega. Let us call this as equation E. Likewise, the synthesis equation here, this is a synthesis equation. We will represent instead of omega, we will represent in terms of small omega by t. So this you can write as x of n on the left hand side is equal to t by 2 pi integral minus omega s by 2 to plus omega s by 2 excess of omega e raised to j omega n t d omega, which becomes, so this becomes 1 by omega s. So we have written the same expression here. So this becomes 1 by omega s. Now we will represent this in terms of small omega. This integral will represent in terms of small omega. So first of all, you observe that d omega, d small omega is equal to t into d capital omega. So d capital omega therefore can be represented as d omega by t. I will take that t outside. So 1 by omega is into t. And now let us see, this becomes excess of omega by t. This term becomes e raised to j. Omega into t can be represented as small omega. So you have this n term here, and then this you have d omega. Let us see what happens to the limit when omega becomes equal to omega s by 2. When omega is equal to omega s by 2, what happens to small omega? Small omega is equal to capital omega into t, which is equal to omega s by 2 into t. And you know omega s by 2 is 2 pi by t. Omega s is 2 pi by t. So omega s by 2 into t becomes therefore equal to pi. So this integral reduces to 1 by omega s into t integral minus pi to plus pi excess of omega by t into e raised to j omega and d omega. Observe that omega s into t is just equal to 2 pi. So this outer term reduces to 1 by 2 pi. So now if you represent, so you have these two equations here. This is called as equation F. This is equation E. Now you have to take my word for this for the time being. There is a particular reason for labeling excess of omega by t as equal to x of e power j omega. So what we are going to represent is excess of omega by t is equal to x of e raised to j omega. So this term, this representation could be new to you because earlier we had been representing the transforms of signals as either x of s or as x of omega, as in the case of your continuous Fourier transform, and x of z as in the case of your z transform. But now you have a different representation. We will represent in terms of an exponential here. Take my word for that. There is a very important reason for representing it like this. So excess of omega by t, we will call this as x of e power j omega. Excess of omega by t we will call as x of e power j omega. So now we will write down this expression. So this left hand side becomes x of e raised to j omega, x of e power j omega. So x of e power j omega can be written as sigma n is equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of n e raised to minus j omega n. This equal as the analysis equation. This is your analysis equation. And what is important is the synthesis equation. This time you know has reduced to 1 by 2 pi. So that is 1 by 2 pi integral minus pi to plus pi. Then you have this x of this we have replaced by x of e power j omega, e raised to j omega and d omega. So this we call as the synthesis equation. So you have an analysis equation given by a summation and a synthesis equation given by an integration. So that is very important. This is a very important observation. Analysis equation given by a summation and the synthesis equation given by an integration. So sigma over n is equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of n e raised to minus j omega n is your analysis equation. So this is a summation. Now why is this a summation? Because n is discrete. N is discrete means n can be counted. N takes integer values. Say for example n takes 0, value 0, plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3, etc. So n are discrete time instances. So x of n therefore can be counted. So therefore this becomes a summation, which means n is a discrete variable. Now look at this, x of n is equal to 1 by 2 pi integral minus pi to plus pi, x of e raised to j omega, e raised to j omega n d omega, x of e power j omega, e raised to j omega n d omega. Now, here your variable is omega, and now the variable omega is a continuous variable taking values between minus pi to plus pi. Okay, n is discrete, omega is continuous. So that is why your analysis is a summation and your synthesis is an integration. Omega is continuous, taking values between minus pi to plus pi. N is discrete, taking values 0, plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3, etc. This you call as the discrete time Fourier transform here. This you call as the discrete time Fourier transform. Or in other words, x of e raised to j omega or x of e power j omega is the discrete time Fourier transform of x of n. And x of n is the inverse discrete time Fourier transform of x of e power j omega. So just like x of t and x of j omega, you have x of n and x of e power j omega. Omega being a discrete frequency and represented as small omega. So this we represent as BTFT pair and is represented as x of n having a BTFT given by x of e power j omega. Any doubts? Do you want me to stop for any discussion regarding this? Okay, so I think I will proceed now. Now, we will look at what happens to the discrete spectrum when you have this change of variable from capital omega to small omega. What will happen to the discrete spectrum when the frequency variable capital omega is scaled to small omega is equal to capital omega t. So that's a very important observation. The relation was obviously xs of omega by t is equal to x of e power omega. So we will plot xs of omega, which we had done in the previous class when we have discussed the sampling theorem. So xs of omega is your periodically repeated spectra. So these are replicas. This is your baseband. So it is repeating at the sampling frequency. So you have a replica centered at omega s. You will have a replica centered at 2 omega s, 3 omega s, minus omega s, minus 2 omega s, etc. up to both sides of the x-axis. So there are infinity replicas, and the baseband is only this. You only need this to get back the continuous time signal. Now, omega s now corresponds to 2 pi radians. So when you have this discrete frequency, omega s corresponds to 2 pi radians. Omega s corresponds to 2 pi radians, which we had seen here. Omega s corresponds to 2 pi radians. Omega s by 2 corresponds to pi radians. How do you get that? Omega, small omega is equal to capital omega into t. So when capital omega is equal to omega s, capital omega s into t is omega s into 2 pi by omega s. So that will cancel out, and you have the discrete frequency equivalent of omega s is equal to 2 pi. And the discrete frequency equivalent of capital omega s by 2 is equal to pi. Is that clear? So therefore the spectrum will be marked like this if you are marking the discrete frequency here. So instead of omega s, you will have 2 pi. Instead of omega s by 2, you will have pi. Minus omega s by 2 will be minus pi. Minus omega s will be minus 2 pi. So this is an angle, whereas this is radians per second. Capital omega is measured in radians per second. Small omega is measured in angles. So 2 pi corresponds to your sampling frequency. Pi corresponds to half the sampling frequency. So that's a very important result. Now we have to make certain important observations about this. The observations are, one, which we had already mentioned, is that discrete frequency small omega is measured in angles, and it has got a unit of radians. So discrete frequency is just an angle. So no longer will you talk about hertz in the discrete domain. You will not talk about hertz in the discrete domain. Hertz is cycles per second. You don't have this per second here. It is dimensionless. Your discrete frequency is dimensionless. Discrete angular frequency omega, small omega, is measured in angles, not in angles per second, in radians per second. So omega, small omega will have the unit of radians. Okay, so unit is radians. The second important property, this is a very, very important property, in that the discrete frequency omega is periodic. Why is omega periodic? Because you have a 2 pi here. This is 2 pi. And here maybe you'll be having a 4 pi. You'll be having a minus 4 pi here. So which means the replicas occur at integer multiples of plus or minus 2n pi. So at 2 pi you have a replica. At 2 into 2 pi you have the second replica. At minus 2 pi you have the replica on the left side. At 2 into minus 2 pi you have the replica here. Likewise you have infinity replicas. So all these replicas of the baseband, that is the band limited low pass signal, occur at integer multiple, occur centered at integer multiples of 2 pi. That is at plus or minus 2n pi, where n is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Now, you also have this relation. What is the angle 2 pi radian? The angle 2 pi radian is the same as the angle 0 radian. The angle 4 pi radian is also the same as the angle 0 radian. Angle 6 pi radian is also the same as the angle 0 radian. Likewise, minus 2 pi, minus 4 pi, minus 6 pi, etc. are all the same as this angle 0 radian. Is that clear? So therefore, the unique angles exist only in the interval, let us say minus pi to plus pi. Or maybe I can say it exists only in the interval 0 to 2 pi. That is, you take an interval of 2 pi, and this is the only range of angles that are unique. Because all other angles are just the same. The angles are just 2 pi plus that given angle. So the angles are just the same. So this is the second observation. Discrete frequency omega is periodic, which means if you have a discrete frequency omega A, some discrete frequency, what is omega A measured at? Measured in omega A is measured in radians. So omega A, let this be equal to, let's say, pi by 3 radian. Omega is equal to pi by 3 radian. So omega A, that is equal to pi by 3 radian, is indistinguishable from pi by 3 radian plus 2 pi radian, because that is the same angle, right? And it's indistinguishable from pi by 3 radian plus 4 pi radian, indistinguishable from pi by 3 radian minus 2 pi radian, etc. So omega A is indistinguishable from omega A plus 2 pi radian. So which means the only unique range of discrete frequencies which are measured in angles lie in an interval of 2 pi. So this interval of 2 pi, maybe start from minus pi to plus pi is your interval of 2 pi. Or maybe if you are starting from 0 to 2 pi is your unique interval of 2 pi, right? So that's the second important observation. Now, the third important observation is that the sampling frequency omega s, corresponds to a discrete frequency 2 pi radian. So that is very easy to see. Sampling frequency omega s corresponds to 2 pi radian, and sampling frequency omega s by 2 corresponds to the discrete frequency pi radian. Sampling frequency omega s corresponds to discrete frequency 2 pi radian, and the omega s by 2, which is the Nyquist frequency, corresponds to pi radian. So omega s by 2 corresponds to pi radian. Okay, so that's the third property, and the next property is that there is a maximum recoverable frequency, which we call as the Nyquist frequency, which is equal to half the sampling rate. It is in fact less than half the sampling rate, because you have that strict inequality. Remember that we have discussed earlier. So the Nyquist rate fs by 2 corresponds to the discrete frequency pi radian. Now this is intuitively satisfying because there is a concept of a maximum frequency. This concept of a maximum frequency is very important. So pi radian corresponds to a maximum frequency. Why? Because pi radian corresponds to the analog frequency fs by 2, which is the maximum recurrable frequency. Okay. So this is intuitively satisfying as omega, the analog frequency, and omega plus omega s are aliases of each other and therefore are indistinguishable, that we had discussed in the previous class. Omega and omega plus omega s are indistinguishable. So which means the discrete frequency actually increases in frequency from 0 to pi radian and decreases in frequency from pi to 2 pi radian, because 2 pi radian is the same as 0 radian. So there is an increase in the discrete frequency from 0 to pi radian, and then there is a discrete frequency from pi to 2 pi radian. So the frequency actually increases and then decreases, right? Is that good? So what is the maximum frequency here? Pi radian. So which means the discrete frequency has got an upper limit which is equal to pi radian. There is no upper limit to the analog frequency, because you can have, let us say, 1 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz, 3 kilohertz, 100 kilohertz, 10,000 kilohertz, 10 raised to 12 kilohertz, etc. You can go on increasing up to infinity. Whereas your discrete frequency is an angle, it is not angles per second, and therefore you have a unique range of frequencies from 0 to 2 pi, out of which the frequency increases from 0 to pi radian and decreases from pi to 2 pi radian. So 0 to pi radian decreases from pi to 2 pi radian. So this is important. So there is a concept of a maximum frequency. That maximum frequency in fact corresponds to the frequency of the maximum frequency of the baseband signal that can be recovered. Maximum frequency of the baseband signal, that's the band limited baseband signal that can be required. Okay, so there is a maximum discrete frequency. Unlike analog frequency, there is no upper limit. So this in fact should have been, there is a maximum discrete frequency corresponding to pi radian. This is corresponding to pi radian because 2 pi radian is same as 0 radian. So this 2 is not there. We have to cancel this out. So I will do that later when I upload the lecture notes. So there is no 2 here. Now x of, why do you have this representation x of e raised to j omega? I had asked you to take my word that there is a reason why we have used x of e raised to j omega. Now this reason is that x of e power j omega is used to emphasize the fact that x of e raised to j omega plus 2 pi radian is equal to x of e raised to j omega. So which means you have a periodic notion of the frequency in the discrete domain, which means omega plus 2 pi radian is same as omega. So x of e raised to j into, you have a bracket here, omega plus 2 pi radian is equal to x of e raised to j omega. X of e raised to j into omega plus 2 pi radian. So you should have a bracket here, that's equal to x of e raised to j omega. So that is again shown here. The spectrum that we had seen earlier is shown here. So these are the important observations that we have noticed here. So what are the important observations? One is that the discrete frequency is measured in angles. The second is that the discrete frequency is periodic. And the third is that there is a only unique range of frequencies from minus pi to plus pi, or maybe from 0 to 2 pi. And the fourth is that there is a notion of a maximum frequency which corresponds to 2 pi radian. There is a notion of a maximum frequency which corresponds to 2 pi radian. Sorry, pi radian. So the frequency increases from 0 to pi radian and decreases from pi radian to 2 pi radian, because 2 pi radian is the same as 0 radian. Okay, and then now we are ready to conclude. So you have a discrete sequence x of n, which is having a Fourier transform given by discrete time Fourier transform given by x of e power j omega, where x of e power j omega is equal to sigma over n is equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of n e raised to minus j omega n We'll call this as the analysis equation. Why? Because you are analyzing x of n in terms of its frequency components. Now, from the frequency components, you can synthesize x of n. X of n is equal to 1 by 2 pi integral minus pi to plus pi x of e power j omega e raised to j omega and d omega. So this limit from minus pi to pi, you can maybe also write as integral 0 to 2 pi, or in general you can write this as any interval of 0 to 2 pi. So which means we can even write this as 2 pi to 4 pi or minus 2 pi to 0. So any interval of 2 pi can be used here. So the normal accepted expression is 1 by 2 pi integral minus pi to plus pi x of e raised to omega, e raised to j omega and d omega. So this is your synthesis equation. So this concludes today's session about discrete time Fourier transforms. So I could have actually derived the concept of discrete time Fourier transforms in a number of ways. I could have maybe started with your Z transforms, and then maybe we could have gone on to discrete time Fourier transforms. So maybe if you look at this equation, x of e power j omega is equal to sigma over n equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of n e raised to minus j omega is uncannily similar to your Z transform expression. Just remember the Z transform expression as x of z is equal to sigma over n is equal to minus infinity to plus infinity x of n z raised to minus n, where z was equal to r e power j omega. So r e power j omega, when omega varies from minus pi to plus pi or varies from 0 to 2 pi, traces out a circle of radius r. Right? Now if we put r is equal to 1, r e power j omega, the r e power j omega becomes just e power j omega. So z raised to minus n, instead of that, if you put r equal to 1, that simply becomes e raised to minus omega n. So in other words, your discrete time Fourier transform is your Z transform evaluated over what is known as the unit circle. This Manoj sir would have explained what is the significance of unit circle. For a system to be stable, you will require all the poles to be within the. So if that signal, if that impulse response corresponds to a causal sequence, that is, if h of n is causal, if you are referring to a causal system, then you require all the poles of h of n to lie within the unit circle, so that the region of convergence of h of z now includes the unit circle. So you have this, you have this concept of region of convergence, which we also had seen for your Laplace transform. You have a region of convergence for Laplace transform. You say that a system represented by h of t is stable when the region of convergence of h of s includes the j omega axis, which means all the poles of h of s should lie on the left side of the s plane. Only then will the region of convergence include the j omega axis. Likewise, when you come to discrete systems, the system is stable when the region of convergence of h of z, which is a transfer function, that's the region of convergence of the transfer function, includes the unit circle, which will mean that. So instead of that j omega axis, now you have the unit circle. So which will mean that all the poles of the transfer function h of z should lie inside the unit circle when the system is a causal system. Here we mostly only deal with causal systems. So maybe when you look at image processing, etc., there is a significance for non-causal systems because the domain is not tied there. So that is all about our discussions today. I just wanted to note these two problems. Why I have put this as an exercise for you today is, this question was recently asked for the KTU PhD scholars examination. You are given, so we'll just discuss these two questions and wind up. So it will maybe take barely 5 minutes for that. Now you have a spectrum like this. So what do you note about this spectrum is that this spectrum is not symmetric. On the left hand side, it is only -2, and on the right hand side is 3. So what you can say about this spectrum is, one is that x of f is totally real. Why? Because there is no phase vector. You have not shown any phase vector. So x of f is totally real. There is no imaginary part to x of f. X of f is totally real. X of f is real does not mean that x of p is real. So x of f is a real quantity. Now you also have this result that its inverse Fourier transform will not be real. This we had discussed earlier when we had discussed Fourier transforms. The BMAT students should be very familiar with that. For a real signal, the spectrum will have a symmetric magnitude spectrum and an anti-symmetric phase spectrum. This we have discussed earlier. Now you see that the spectrum, I have not drawn a magnitude or a phase spectrum here. This is spectrum. Spectrum is real. And now that spectrum is not symmetric, which means that the signal is a complex signal. Now the question is, find the minimum sampling rate for perfect reconstruction. So that is very easy to find out. What is the maximum frequency? The maximum frequency is 3. Okay, it's not 2. Say for example, if this had extended up to -4, then the maximum frequency would have been 4. Okay, then what would have been the minimum sampling rate? It should have been slightly greater than twice the maximum frequency of the signal. In this case, it is 3. So, which means it should be slightly greater than 2 into 3, which is equal to 6 kilohertz. Slightly greater than 6 kilohertz. That is the minimum sampling rate. Now you have another question. A baseband signal is band limited to 100 kilohertz. A baseband signal is band limited to 100 kilohertz. So, which means it should be sampled at greater than 200 kilohertz. Now, this is sampled at a sampling frequency of 250 kilohertz. This is sampled at a sampling frequency of 250 kilohertz. You are asked to find the minimum passband of the reconstruction filter. So that is very easy. What should be the minimum passband of the reconstruction filter? The reconstruction filter should pass all frequencies up to 100 kilohertz without any distortion. So passband would be up to 100 kilohertz. That is very obvious. Is that clear? Minus 100 kilohertz to plus 100 kilohertz would be the passband of the ideal low pass filter of the filter. Now, it need not be an ideal low pass filter, which means you need not have a brick wall response there. You can actually have a stop band edge frequency which is greater than the passband edge frequency. Why? Because you have sampled this at 250 kilohertz instead of sampling this at 200 kilohertz. You have oversampled the signal at 250 kilohertz. So what does it mean? You have a baseband starting from minus 100 kilohertz to plus 100 kilohertz centered at 0. Then you have the replica of that centered at 250 kilohertz. So at 250 kilohertz, minus 100 to the left and minus 100 to the right. So from 250 kilohertz, minus 100 to the left would be up to minus, that would be up to 150 kilohertz. 250 minus 100 kilohertz is 150 kilohertz. 150 kilohertz to 350 kilohertz. So 150 from 150 kilohertz, the second replica of the signal starts. At 100 kilohertz, the maximum frequency of the signal ends. So which means you can have a passband as small as 100 kilohertz, and you can have a stop band as large as 150 kilohertz. Is that clear? Is that clear? Stop band can be as large as 150 kilohertz, because up to 150 kilohertz there is no content of the replica. Is that clear? So that's all about today's class. So if you have any doubts regarding this, please write into me through your WhatsApp groups, or maybe you can have a discussion when we start the next session. I hope whatever we have discussed is really clear to everyone. Please go through the video lectures tomorrow's class we will be. I'm planning to have a class tomorrow also, because my target is to complete this by this Saturday. On 22nd you have your exams, right? So I'm planning to complete the entire syllabus up to the 6th module, whatever remains of the 5th and 6th modules by this Saturday. So maybe I will have to conduct some classes every day. Okay. And then for the second series test, we will have, that is in our case, the third series test, we will have questions from the 5th and the 6th module. Okay. I hope whatever I have taught today is fairly clear. You can do a second reading of the lecture notes that will be uploaded.